The November rain fell in steady sheets against the tinted windows of the Crimson Lounge, blurring the neon lights of Manhattan into watercolor streaks of red and gold. Inside the nightclub, the atmosphere was thick with expensive cologne, cigarette smoke that somehow evaded the city's indoor smoking ban, and the low hum of wealth and power exchanging hands beneath a veneer of celebration. Anya Volkov moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her black uniform crisp and anonymous, her dark hair pulled back into a tight bun that made her look older than her 28 years. She carried a tray of crystal glasses filled with imported vodka, each one worth more than she made in a week. Her feet ached in the required heels, but she'd learned long ago to hide discomfort behind a neutral expression. She had been working at the Crimson Lounge for 7 months now, ever since she'd lost her position as a translator at a small publishing house. The pay was better here, even if the hours were longer and the clientele far more dangerous. Every paycheck went directly to Mount Sinai Hospital, where her younger brother Mikhail was receiving treatment for a rare autoimmune condition. The experimental therapy was working, but it cost more than most people made in a year. "Miss, another bottle of the Beluga Noble," a voice called from table 7, and Anya nodded with a professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. The VIP section of the Crimson Lounge occupied the entire 3rd floor, accessible only by a private elevator and guarded by men in dark suits whose jackets couldn't quite hide the bulges at their sides. Anya had clearance because she was quiet, efficient, and most importantly, seemed to understand nothing beyond drink orders. She'd learned quickly that invisibility was survival in a place like this. Tonight was special, though she didn't know why. The energy in the room crackled with tension beneath the forced joviality. Viktor Morozov, the owner of the Crimson Lounge and a dozen other legitimate businesses that barely masked his real enterprises, sat at the center table like a king holding court. He was in his late 40s, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Anya's yearly rent, and when he spoke, everyone listened. Anya had seen him dozens of times, but never up close. He existed in her peripheral vision, a dangerous star around which everyone else orbited. She knew the stories, of course. Everyone who worked at the Crimson Lounge knew them. Viktor Morozov had come to New York 20 years ago with nothing and built an empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and an uncanny ability to stay 3 steps ahead of both his enemies and the law. People who crossed him tended to disappear. People who served him loyally became wealthy. She delivered the bottle to table 7 and turned to retreat when she heard it. A snippet of conversation in Russian, her native language, spoken in low tones near the service corridor. During the toast, when everyone raises their glasses, Anya's hand trembled slightly as she set down an empty tray. She shouldn't have understood. She shouldn't have been listening. But the words cut through the music and chatter like a blade. She glanced toward the voices and recognized them immediately. Alexei Petrov and Dmitry Volgin, 2 of Viktor's most trusted men. They'd been with him for over a decade, present at every important meeting, every private celebration. Alexei was the older of the 2. Late 50s, with a weathered face and calculating eyes. Dmitry was younger, barely 40, handsome in a brutal sort of way. Anya busied herself adjusting glasses on a nearby table, her heart hammering against her ribs. She shouldn't be here. She should move away. But something kept her rooted to the spot. That same instinct that had saved her life during a mugging 3 years ago. The ability to sense when something was very wrong. "The bottle is prepared," Dmitry murmured in Russian, his voice barely audible over the music. "When Viktor makes the toast for Konstantin's birthday, we switch his glass. Sokolov's people will be waiting outside to extract us immediately after." Anya's blood turned to ice. Sokolov. She'd heard that name whispered in fearful tones by other staff members. Roman Sokolov, Viktor's rival, a man whose territory wars had left bodies in the East River and businesses burned to the ground. "You're certain the dosage is correct?" Alexei asked. "It needs to look natural. A heart attack, nothing suspicious. It's handled. By the time anyone realizes, we'll be in Atlantic City." Anya forced herself to move, walking toward the bar with mechanical precision. Her mind raced. She could pretend she'd heard nothing. She could finish her shift, collect her paycheck, and continue living her quiet life. These people, Viktor, Alexei, Dmitry, Sokolov, they inhabited a world she wanted no part of. But if she said nothing, a man would die tonight. She thought of Mikhail, his thin face lighting up when she visited the hospital, his optimism despite the tubes and monitors. She thought of her parents who had brought her to America when she was 12, seeking a better life. They'd worked brutal hours, sacrificed everything, and taught her that staying silent in the face of wrong was its own kind of evil. Her hands shook as she approached the bar. The bartender, a man named Carlos who'd always been kind to her, was mixing drinks with practiced efficiency. "Carlos," she said quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. "The bottle of Cristal for table 1. Mr. Morozov's table. Has it been opened yet?" "Just about to send it up." "Why? Let me take it. I'm heading that way anyway." He shrugged and handed her the bottle in its ice bucket, along with fresh glasses. Anya's mind worked frantically as she carried it toward the VIP section. She had perhaps 3 minutes before the toast, 3 minutes to decide if she was brave enough or foolish enough to intervene. The table was surrounded by men in expensive suits, their laughter too loud, their smiles too sharp. Victor sat at the center, his attention on an older man with a gray beard. Constantine, she presumed, the birthday celebrant. Alexei and Dmitri stood nearby, ready to serve, ready to execute their plan. Anya set the ice bucket on the table, her movements smooth despite the panic clawing at her chest. She began pouring champagne into glasses with practiced precision, working her way around the table. When she reached Victor's position, she saw Alexei's hand move subtly, preparing to make the switch. Time seemed to slow. Her parents' voices echoed in her memory. Anya, remember, we may have left Russia, but we brought our souls with us. Never abandon them for convenience or fear. She made her decision. As she poured Victor's glass, her hand slipped and champagne spilled across the tablecloth. She gasped, immediately reaching for napkins, her body blocking Alexei's attempt to switch the glass. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said in English, her accent thicker than usual in her nervousness. "Please, let me get you a fresh glass." Before anyone could respond, she picked up the glass, the one Alexei had been reaching for, and turned toward the bar. In one smooth motion that looked like clumsy panic, she switched it with a clean glass from her tray and poured fresh champagne directly from the bottle she controlled. "Here, sir. Again, my deepest apologies." Victor's ice blue eyes locked onto hers for the first time, and Anya felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. For a moment that stretched into eternity, he studied her face, and she was certain he could see every secret she'd ever kept. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a trace of a Russian accent beneath perfect English. "No harm done. What's your name?" "Anya, sir." "Anya." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "You've worked here how long?" "7 months, sir." "And you're always this attentive?" She didn't know how to answer that, so she simply said, "I try to do my job well, sir." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or suspicion. He lifted the glass she'd given him, examining it in the light, then set it down without drinking. "Gentlemen," Victor announced, rising to his feet. The room fell silent. "A toast to Constantine, who has been my friend and advisor for 25 years. May we all be blessed with such loyalty." The word loyalty hung in the air like a blade. Everyone raised their glasses. Victor raised his, the one Anya had given him, but as she watched, he didn't drink. Instead, his eyes moved to Alexei, who had gone pale, and then to Dmitri, whose hand trembled slightly as he held his own glass. "Actually," Victor said softly, his voice cutting through the music, "I find myself not thirsty. Alexei, why don't you drink this for me? You look like you could use something strong." The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alexei's face drained of color. "Sir, I insist." Victor's tone was pleasant, but everyone in the room understood the command beneath it. Anya's heart hammered so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She took a step back, trying to blend into the shadows, to become invisible once more. Alexei reached for the glass with a shaking hand. Dmitri moved suddenly as if to run, but 2 of the guards blocked the exit before he'd taken a single step. "No need for dramatics," Victor said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "Just a drink among friends, unless there's something you'd like to tell me first." The silence stretched, broken only by the distant thump of bass from the dance floor below. Anya watched as Alexei's face crumpled, as years of loyalty and planning dissolved into terror. "Victor, please," Alexei began, but Victor raised his hand. "Not here, not in front of guests." He nodded to his security chief, a mountain of a man named Nikolai. "Escort them to my office. We'll discuss this matter privately." As the guards moved to take Alexei and Dmitri, Victor's gaze found Anya again, standing frozen by the wall. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he raised his glass, the poisoned one he'd never drunk, in a small salute before handing it to Nikolai. "Have this analyzed. I want to know exactly what was in it." Anya's legs felt like water. She should leave, she should run, but she couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there as the full weight of what she'd done crashed over her. She had saved a man's life tonight. She had also stepped into a world from which there might be no return. As the party resumed with forced normalcy and Victor disappeared into his private office, Anya finally moved, retreating to the service area on trembling legs. She grabbed her coat and purse, intending to leave, to disappear into the rainy New York night and never look back. But as she reached the employee exit, Nikolai appeared, blocking her path. He was at least 6'5", built like a refrigerator, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. "Mr. Morozov would like you to remain until the end of your shift," he said in accented English. It wasn't a request. Anya nodded mutely, hanging her coat back up with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She had wanted to save a life. She'd succeeded, but as she returned to the floor, feeling Victor's eyes tracking her movements from wherever he watched, she realized she might have just traded one kind of danger for another. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the city clean, while inside, the Crimson Lounge, Anya Volkov's life changed forever. Anya didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small studio apartment in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, watching the gray light of dawn creep across the water-stained ceiling. The apartment was barely 400 square feet, a kitchenette separated from the living space by a folding screen, a bathroom with perpetually dripping faucet, and a Murphy bed that groaned every time she pulled it down. The walls were thin enough that she could hear Mrs. Kozlov next door arguing with her daughter in Ukrainian about marriage prospects. It was 6:47 a.m. when she heard the footsteps in the hallway. They were deliberate, purposeful, not the shuffling of her elderly neighbors or the rushed steps of the young family upstairs. These footsteps stopped directly outside her door. Anya's heart seized in her chest. Through the peephole, she saw a broad-shouldered man in a dark overcoat, his face partially obscured by the hall's dim lighting. But she recognized him immediately. Nikolai, Victor's head of security. The knock that followed was polite, almost gentle. Somehow that made it more terrifying. "Miss Volkov," his accented voice came through the door. "Mr. Morozov requests your presence. I have a car waiting downstairs. Please, there is no need for alarm." Anya pressed her back against the door, her mind racing through impossible options. A fire escape led to an alley, but she was 4 floors up. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter. She could call 911, but what would she say? That a dangerous man wanted to talk to her because she'd prevented a poisoning at an illegal gathering? "Miss Volkov," Nikolai continued, his tone patient. "I understand you are frightened, but Mr. Morozov simply wishes to speak with you. You have my word that no harm will come to you. However, if you do not answer, I have been instructed to wait. I am very patient." Anya closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. She thought of Mikhail, scheduled for his treatment this afternoon. If something happened to her, who would take care of him? Their aunt in Boston was too old, too frail. He had no one else. With trembling hands, she opened the door. Nikolai stood in the hallway, somehow looking even larger in the confined space. Up close, she could see he was probably in his mid-50s, with gray in his close-cropped hair and a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. But his eyes, surprisingly, were kind. "Thank you," he said simply. "Please, take whatever you need. We won't be long." The black Mercedes waited at the curb, its engine running, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. Nikolai opened the rear door, and Anya slid in, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their shaking. The interior smelled of leather and expensive cologne. They drove in silence through the early morning streets of Brooklyn, past the Russian shops with their Cyrillic signs, past the bakeries where elderly women queued for fresh bread, past the remnants of her childhood transplanted to American soil. They crossed the Brooklyn Bridge as the sun broke through the cloud cover, turning the East River into molten gold. Manhattan rose before them like a fortress of glass and steel, beautiful and unforgiving. The car navigated through morning traffic with practiced ease, finally pulling up to a building in Tribeca that Anya recognized from magazines, a converted warehouse turned luxury condominiums, the kind where apartments sold for millions. "This way, please," Nikolai said, leading her through a private entrance to an elevator that required a key card. They ascended in silence, the numbers climbing. 10, 15, 20, 25. The penthouse. The elevator doors opened directly into an apartment that took Anya's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, from the Freedom Tower to the bridges spanning the rivers. The interior was minimalist but clearly expensive. Modern furniture in neutral tones, original artwork on the walls, and a kitchen with appliances that probably cost more than everything Anya owned combined. Victor Morozov stood by the windows, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, somehow more intimidating in casual dress than in his tailored suits. "Coffee?" he asked without turning around. "Or perhaps tea? Nikolai tells me you take it with lemon, no sugar. Very Russian of you." The fact that he knew how she took her tea sent ice down Anya's spine. "Coffee is fine," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Victor turned, and in the morning light she could see him more clearly than she ever had at the club. His face was harder than she'd realized, marked by lines that spoke of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. But his eyes, that penetrating ice blue, held an intelligence that missed nothing. "Sit, please." He gestured to a leather chair near the windows. "I imagine you're wondering why you're here." Anya sat on the edge of the chair, her back straight, ready to run, though she knew it was pointless. "I assume it's about last night." "Yes." He settled into the chair across from her, maintaining a careful distance that was somehow both respectful and strategic. "Last night you prevented what would have been a very successful attempt on my life. I'd like to understand why." I heard them talking in Russian. They didn't know I understood. Most people would have pretended not to hear. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. Anya met his gaze, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. "My parents taught me that silence in the face of wrong makes you complicit." Something flickered in Victor's expression. Surprise, perhaps. Or respect. "Your parents, they were from Moscow, yes? I had my people look into your background last night. Boris and Svetlana Volkov immigrated in 2009 with their 2 children. Hard-working, honest people. They died 5 years ago in a robbery, a jewelry store in Queens where they both worked." Anya's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. "I'm sorry for your loss," Victor continued, and he sounded genuine. "You raised your brother alone after that." Mikhail, age 19, currently at Mount Sinai receiving treatment for autoimmune disorder. Expensive treatment. "If this is a threat," Anya began, her fear crystallizing into anger. It's not. Victor leaned forward slightly. It's context. I need to understand who you are, Anya Volkov, because you've created a significant problem for both of us. I saved your life. Yes. And by doing so, you've made yourself a target. The weight of those words settled over the room like a shroud. Victor stood and walked to a bar cart, pouring himself a measure of whiskey despite the early hour. Alexei and Dmitri confessed everything last night. They've been working with Roman Sokolov for 6 months, feeding him information, waiting for the right moment. Last night was supposed to be perfect. A celebration, security relaxed, everyone drinking. The poison they used was sophisticated, designed to mimic a heart attack. I would have been dead before the ambulance arrived. He took a slow sip, his gaze distant. Sokolov is not a forgiving man. When he learns his plan failed, and he will learn, these things always leak, he'll want to know why. His people were watching the club last night. They saw you rush out. They saw Nikolai stop you. By now, they've identified you. Anya felt the room tilt. What are you saying? I'm saying that you're in danger. Sokolov will assume you're working for me. Or at minimum that you know too much. He'll come after you to send a message or to find out what you know, or simply because leaving loose ends offends his sense of order. Then I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything. And what will you tell them? Victor's voice was gentle but firm. That you overheard a conversation at an illegal gathering? That you suspect these men of planning harm? The police have been trying to build a case against me for 20 years, Anya. Do you think they'll protect you or use you as bait to catch a bigger fish? Anya stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. The city sprawled below. Millions of people going about their lives unaware of the dangerous currents beneath the surface. So what am I supposed to do? Hide? Run? Neither. Running won't help. Sokolov has reach across 3 states. Hiding is temporary at best. Victor set down his glass with careful precision. I'm offering you protection and a position. A position? Anya turned to face him, incredulous. I need someone I can trust. Last night you proved that despite having no obligation to me, despite considerable risk to yourself, you acted on principle. That's rare in my world. Rarer than you can imagine. He moved toward a desk, retrieving a folder. You speak fluent Russian and English. You read and write both. You have a degree in linguistics from Brooklyn College. Impressive, considering you worked 2 jobs to pay for it. How do you? It's my business to know things. That degree, that skill set is valuable. I have business partners who speak only Russian. I have documents that need translation. I have meetings where I need someone who can understand nuances, subtleties that professional translators might miss. He extended the folder toward her. I'm offering you a job as my translator and cultural advisor. The salary is substantial. Your brother's medical care will be covered completely. I have excellent doctors on retainer. Anya stared at the folder as if it contained a snake. You want me to work for you? To be part of this? She gestured around, encompassing not just the apartment, but everything it represented. I want you to survive, and I want someone near me who has demonstrated integrity. Victor's expression hardened slightly. But let me be clear about something. This is not entirely altruistic. You saved my life. In my culture, that creates an obligation, a debt of honor. But it also means you're now connected to me whether you like it or not. Sokolov's people have already photographed your apartment building. They know where your brother receives treatment. They know your routine. As if on cue, Nikolai appeared from another room, carrying a tablet. He showed it to Anya without comment. The screen displayed surveillance photos. Her building, her walking to the subway, Mikhail being wheeled into the hospital for treatment. The timestamps were from this morning, less than an hour ago. Anya felt her legs weaken. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. The question, Victor continued, his voice softer now, is not whether you'll accept my protection. The question is whether you'll do so as an employee with purpose and dignity, or as a helpless victim I'm obligated to shelter. I'm offering you the former, some control over your circumstances, a way to ensure your brother's safety and your own. And if I refuse, then I'll protect you anyway because my honor demands it. But you'll be a prisoner in a gilded cage. Always dependent, always vulnerable, always wondering when the threat will end. He paused. This way, at least you're choosing. You have agency. Anya looked at the folder in her lap, then at the city beyond the windows, then at Victor, this dangerous man who somehow impossibly was offering her a lifeline wrapped in chains. What happened to Alexei and Dmitri? She asked quietly. They're no longer a concern. The ambiguity of that statement hung in the air. Anya didn't ask for clarification. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. I need time to think. Time is a luxury you don't have. Sokolov's people are efficient. By tonight, they'll make their move. I can have your brother moved to a private facility within the hour under guard. I can have you relocated to a secure apartment. This building, actually, 3 floors down, but I need your answer now. Anya thought of Mikhail, his thin face lighting up when she visited, his dreams of becoming a teacher once he recovered. She thought of her parents, their sacrifice, their belief in doing what was right even when it was hard. She thought of the quiet life she'd tried to build from the ruins of tragedy. All of it was gone now, shattered the moment she'd chosen to act. If I do this, she said slowly, I have conditions. Victor's eyebrow rose slightly, but he nodded. I'm listening. My brother knows nothing about this. As far as he's concerned, I got a better job with a private company. He stays in school, lives normally. Agreed. I won't be asked to do anything illegal. Translation, cultural advice, fine. But I won't lie to authorities. I won't participate in anything that harms innocent people. Victor considered this. his expression unreadable. I can agree to that with one caveat. If you learn information that could endanger me or my people, you keep it confidential. Silence is not the same as participation. It was a fine line, but Anya nodded. And I can leave. If I want out, eventually I can leave. When Sokolov is no longer a threat and when I'm satisfied that your departure won't endanger yourself or others. Yes, you can leave. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what she'd wanted for her life, but it was survival, and it was a chance to protect Mikhail. Anya opened the folder. Inside was a contract, dense with legal language, and a bank statement showing an account in her name with a balance that made her dizzy. The monthly salary was more than she'd made in the past year. There's an apartment ready for you, Victor said, handing her a key card. Fully furnished, secure building, 24-hour security. Your brother will be transferred to a private wing at Mount Sinai this afternoon. I've already spoken with his doctors. They're quite optimistic about his treatment. You were very confident I'd agree. No, I was prepared for either outcome, but I hoped you'd choose the path that gave you power rather than the one that made you a victim. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Anya looked at his hand for a long moment. Strong. Scarred, connected to a world she'd tried so hard to avoid. Then she thought of the alternative, running, hiding, watching over her shoulder while Mikhail suffered because she couldn't afford his care. She shook his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing, his skin warm. We have an agreement. Good. Victor's expression shifted to something that might have been relief. Nikolai will help you move your belongings today. Pack light. Anything you need can be provided. Your first assignment begins tomorrow. I have a meeting with several partners from Moscow who are, let's say, difficult to work with in English. Your job will be to translate and to help me understand the subtext of what they're really saying. As Anya stood to leave, Victor spoke again. One more thing. Thank you for last night. Not many people would have done what you did. Anya paused at the elevator doors. My father used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching. It's what they do when they think no one will ever know. Your father was a wise man. He was, and I hope. She stopped, unsure how to finish the thought. You hope he'd understand why you're doing this? Victor finished for her. I hope so too. The elevator doors closed and Anya descended back toward street level, watching the numbers tick down like seconds on a clock. When she emerged onto the sidewalk, the morning sun had burned away the last of the clouds. The city gleamed, beautiful and merciless. Nikolai stood beside the car, holding the door open. Ready, Miss Volkov? Anya took one last look at the world she was leaving behind. The normal world, the safe world, the world where she was just a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. Then she got into the car and let herself be carried toward whatever came next. 3 weeks had passed since Anya Volkov's life had changed forever, and she still woke up disoriented, forgetting for a moment where she was. The apartment on the 22nd floor of the Tribeca building was nothing like her old studio in Brighton Beach. Here, morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating hardwood floors and furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. The kitchen had appliances she'd only seen on cooking shows. The bathroom had heated floors and a shower with more settings than her old car had features. But it wasn't home. It was beautiful, safe, expensive, and it felt like a cage made of glass and luxury. Anya made coffee in the pristine kitchen, watching the city come alive below. It was 6:30 a.m. on a Thursday, and she had a meeting at 9. In 3 weeks, she'd attended 17 meetings, translated hundreds of pages of documents, and learned more about Viktor Morozov's empire than she'd ever wanted to know. The businesses were mostly legitimate, she'd discovered. Real estate holdings, import-export companies, restaurants, nightclubs. But beneath the surface ran darker currents. Protection arrangements with shop owners, gambling operations, money that moved through complex channels for clients who valued discretion. Victor never discussed these aspects in her presence, but she wasn't naive. She could read between the lines of conversations, could sense when topics shifted because she was in the room. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mikhail. Morning, sis. Feeling good today? Dr. Chen says my numbers are improving. This new treatment is amazing. Love you. Anya smiled despite the guilt that accompanied every message from her brother. He believed she'd gotten a job with an international consulting firm, translating for business executives. It wasn't entirely a lie, but the omissions weighed on her conscience like stones. She texted back, "That's wonderful. I'll visit this weekend. Maybe we can watch that movie you wanted to see?" His response came immediately. "Yes, and you need to tell me about your job. You've been so mysterious about it." Anya set down her phone without responding. What could she tell him? That she spent her days translating negotiations between dangerous men, that she lived in luxury paid for by money she tried not to think too hard about, that she'd traded their safety for her complicity in a world she didn't fully understand. At 8:45 a.m., Nikolai knocked on her door. He'd become her constant shadow, bodyguard, driver, and surprisingly, something close to a friend. In 3 weeks, she'd learned he had a daughter studying medicine in Boston, that he'd been with Victor for 15 years, and that beneath his intimidating exterior lived a man with a dry sense of humor and unexpected kindness. "Ready, Miss Volkov?" he asked as he did every morning. "Anya," she corrected as she did every morning. "Please, just Anya. Old habits," he replied with the ghost of a smile. The meeting was at one of Victor's legitimate businesses, a high-end restaurant in Midtown that served authentic Russian cuisine to homesick immigrants and adventurous Americans. They arrived through a private entrance, ascending to a private dining room on the third floor. Victor was already there. Along with 3 men Anya had learned to read like books. Sergei was the accountant, nervous and precise, always checking his papers twice. Yuri handled property acquisitions, smooth and charming until you crossed him. And Konstantin, the same man whose birthday had nearly been Victor's last night, was the elder statesman, wise and calculating. Anya, good morning, Victor greeted her. He was always formal during business meetings, maintaining a careful distance. We're expecting our guests in 10 minutes. They're associates from Moscow, here to discuss a potential partnership. I need you to translate, but also to listen. Tell me afterward what you really heard beneath their words. It was a task he'd given her several times now, and Anya had discovered she was good at it. Growing up between 2 languages, 2 cultures, she'd learned to read subtext, to hear what people meant rather than just what they said. The guests arrived precisely on time. 4 men in expensive suits, led by a man named Dmitry Volinsky. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and elegant, with the bearing of someone accustomed to power. The introductions were made in a mixture of Russian and English, everyone polite, everyone watchful. The meeting began with pleasantries, discussion of the food, the weather, mutual acquaintances in Moscow. Anya translated smoothly, her voice neutral and professional. But she was listening to the pauses, the tone shifts, the words chosen and avoided. We represent certain interests in Moscow, Volinsky said in Russian, who are interested in expanding their presence in New York. We understand you have significant holdings in Brighton Beach and Queens, Victor replied in English, forcing the translation, creating a buffer. I have business interests in many neighborhoods, but I'm selective about partnerships. Trust is essential. Of course, Volinsky agreed. Which is why we've done our research. You're known as a man of honor, Mr. Morozov, a man who keeps his word. As Anya translated, she noticed the slight emphasis Volinsky placed on certain words. Honor, word. These weren't casual observations. They were probes, testing Victor's reputation, his reliability. The conversation shifted to specifics, properties, investment amounts, profit-sharing arrangements. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars changing hands through corporate structures so complex Anya could barely follow them. But underneath the business talk, she heard something else. Volinsky's men kept mentioning names, dropped casually into conversation. She recognized some of them from documents she'd translated, people connected to Sokolov's organization. It wasn't direct, nothing that could be quoted, but the pattern was there. During a pause while food was served, blinis with caviar, borscht, beef stroganoff, Victor caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the hallway. Anya excused herself, ostensibly to take a phone call. Victor joined her a moment later in the corridor. What are you hearing? They're connected to Sokolov, Anya said quietly. I'm not certain how, but the names they're dropping, the way Volinsky phrases things, he's testing whether you know about the connection. This isn't just a business proposal, it's a probe. Victor's jaw tightened. You're certain? Not legally certain, but culturally, linguistically, yes. They're gathering information about your operations while pretending to offer partnership. Why would Sokolov send them? After what happened with Alexei and Dmitry, maybe that's exactly why, Anya interrupted, then caught herself. Sorry, I shouldn't know. Continue. I want your thoughts. Anya gathered her courage. The attempt failed. Sokolov lost 2 people inside your organization. Now he needs new intelligence, so he sends these men under the guise of legitimate business. If you accept the partnership, he gets access to your operations. If you refuse, he learns something about your current situation based on how and why you refuse. Victor studied her for a long moment. You have good instincts. My father would have called it chutyo, that sense for danger that can't be taught. My mother had it too, Anya said softly. She used to say she could smell trouble before it arrived. I wish she'd had that sense the night of the robbery. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Not quite sympathy, but recognition. Before he could respond, Konstantin appeared at the end of the hallway. Victor, they're asking for you. Back in the dining room, Anya resumed her position, translating as the conversation continued. But now, watching Volinsky's careful maneuvering, she felt something unexpected. Anger. These men thought they were clever, thought they could manipulate and scheme their way into Victor's organization. They had no idea what it had cost her to be in this room, what she'd sacrificed. The meeting concluded with vague promises to consider the proposal and continue discussions. As the Russian delegation departed, Volinsky paused near Anya, speaking in Russian. You translate very well, young lady. Very precise. Tell me, where did you learn? From my parents, Anya replied in Russian. They taught me that language is a bridge, not a weapon. Volinsky smiled, but his eyes were cold. Wise parents, though sometimes a bridge serves both purposes, doesn't it? After they left, Victor gathered his core team in the private dining room. Sergei was already pulling up documents on his tablet. Yuri was making calls, and Konstantin sat quietly, his weathered face thoughtful. Analysis, Victor said simply, looking at Anya. She took a breath. Volinsky isn't here to do business. He's mapping your organization, who you trust, where your holdings are, how you make decisions. The proposal is designed to seem attractive enough that you'll reveal information while considering it. Every question he asked was strategic. I agree, Konstantin said. I recognized two of his men. They worked security for Sokolov 5 years ago. Viktor's expression darkened. So Sokolov is trying a different approach, subtler than poison, but just as dangerous. He turned to Yuri. Pull our investment from any property within 3 blocks of Volinsky's hotel. I want a buffer. Sergei, audit all our accounts. Look for any unusual activity, any sign they've compromised our financial information. As orders were given and plans made, Anya felt the weight of her role settling more heavily on her shoulders. She wasn't just translating words anymore. Her insights were shaping decisions, influencing strategy. She was becoming part of this world, not just an observer passing through it. The meeting broke up, people dispersing to their assignments. Viktor asked Anya to remain. You did well today, he said once they were alone. Better than I expected. I just told you what I heard. You told me what you understood. That's different and more valuable. He poured 2 glasses of tea from a samovar in the corner. A traditional Russian one, ornate and obviously old. This belonged to my grandmother. She brought it from Moscow when my parents emigrated. She used to say that tea tastes different when it's poured with history. Anya accepted the glass, surprised by this glimpse of something personal. When did your family come to America? 1995. I was 23. The Soviet Union had collapsed. Russia was chaos. My father thought America was the answer. Viktor's voice carried old bitterness. He was wrong. America didn't want Russian immigrants with no money and heavy accents. He died working 3 jobs, trying to build something better. I'm sorry, don't be. He taught me valuable lessons, that the law protects those who can afford protection, that honor matters more than legality, that sometimes you have to build your own justice because the system won't provide it. Anya sipped her tea, tasting the bergamot and something else. Perhaps that history Viktor mentioned. Is that why you do what you do? Partly. Also because I'm good at it, and because in this world, power is the only real safety. He met her eyes. You're learning that now, aren't you? You followed the rules, lived a good life, and it got you nothing. The moment you stepped outside those rules, the moment you acted instead of staying silent, everything changed. I saved your life. Yes, and I'm grateful. But you also learned that action has consequences, that morality is more complicated than we're taught as children. He set down his glass. I'm not trying to corrupt you, Anya. I'm trying to prepare you, because Sokolov won't stop. Today was reconnaissance. Tomorrow will be something else. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Nikolai appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Sir, we have a problem. Viktor stood immediately. What happened? A fire at one of your properties in Queens, the apartment building on Brighton Beach Avenue. Nikolai glanced at Anya. 3 units were damaged. No casualties, but the fire marshal is calling it suspicious. Anya felt her blood run cold. Brighton Beach Avenue? Near the Russian bakery? Yes, that was her old neighborhood, her old building. If she still lived there. Sokolov is sending a message, Viktor said, his voice deadly calm. He's showing he knows where she came from, that he can reach into her past. He turned to Nikolai. Triple the security on her brother, and I want surveillance on Sokolov's known locations. All of them. Already in motion, sir. After Nikolai left, Viktor moved to the windows, looking out at the city. This is my fault. I should have anticipated this. It's not your fault, Anya said, surprised by the conviction in her voice. It's Sokolov's choice. His decision to hurt people. Yes, but you're caught in the middle because you chose to help me. Anya joined him at the window, watching the afternoon sun paint the buildings gold and amber. Below, millions of people lived their lives, unaware of the shadow wars fought in penthouses and back rooms. She thought of her old neighbors, Mrs. Kozlov and her daughter, the young family upstairs. Were they safe? Had anyone been hurt? I need to know something, she said quietly. My parents, a robbery where they died. Was that connected to any of this? To Sokolov or to you or? Viktor turned to face her, his expression unreadable. I had the same question after I learned about your background, so I had my people investigate. He pulled out his phone, showing her a police report. The robbery was random, as far as anyone can tell. Wrong place, wrong time. The perpetrators were caught and convicted. Small-time criminals with no organizational connections. Relief flooded through Anya, so intense it made her dizzy. Thank you for checking. I needed to know. But, Viktor continued, his voice harder now, the fact that I could investigate so thoroughly, that I have access to sealed police reports and can track down information the authorities couldn't, that should tell you something about the world you're in now. I know, Anya said. I'm not naive, Viktor. I know what you are, what you do. Do you? He stepped closer, and for the first time she saw real intensity in his eyes. Do you understand that people in my organization have done terrible things, that I've made decisions that kept me awake at night, that the money paying for your brother's treatment, for this apartment, for your safety, some of it comes from sources that would horrify you? Yes, Anya said, meeting his gaze steadily. I understand all of that, but I also understand that you've kept your word to me, that you protected my brother, that you've treated me with respect when you could have treated me like property. I'm not saying you're a good man, Viktor, but you're not the worst man I could have ended up owing my life to. For a long moment, they stood in the fading afternoon light, 2 people from similar backgrounds who'd taken very different paths to the same place. You're stronger than I thought, Viktor said finally. Most people break when they see behind the curtain. They can't handle the cognitive dissonance, the good person doing bad things or the bad person doing good good things. You're finding a way to live with ambiguity. I don't have much choice. We always have choices. You're choosing to survive with your principles intact. That's harder than you think. Anya's phone buzzed. Another text from Mikhail. Dr. Chen says if this keeps up, I might be in remission by Christmas. Can you believe it? I'm going to beat this thing. She showed Victor the message. This is why I'm here. Why I'll stay as long as I need to. My brother gets to live, gets to have a future. Whatever moral compromises I'm making, they're worth it for that. Victor nodded slowly. Family, the only thing stronger than survival instinct. Sokolov understands that too, which is why he's targeting your past, trying to make you feel vulnerable. He pulled out his phone, making a call. Yuri, I want property protection on Brighton Beach Avenue. Armed security, visible presence, and find out which of our people live in that neighborhood. Make sure they know they're being looked after. After he hung up, he turned back to Anya. You're not alone in this. Remember that. Whatever Sokolov does next, we face it together. It was the closest thing to reassurance Anya had felt since this began. Not safety. She understood now that safety was an illusion, but solidarity, partnership, the knowledge that she wasn't just a pawn, but a player in this dangerous game. As Nikolai drove her home that evening, Anya watched the city slide past, its lights beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. She thought about bridges and weapons, about the choices we make, and the prices we pay. She thought about her parents who'd crossed an ocean seeking opportunity, and about herself who'd crossed a different kind of boundary seeking survival. Somewhere in the city, Roman Sokolov was planning his next move. Somewhere, fire marshals were investigating a suspicious blaze. Somewhere, her brother was celebrating good news, unaware of the forces swirling around his sister's new life. And somewhere in between all of that, Anya Volkov was learning to walk between worlds, the one she'd known and the one she'd entered. Neither fully good nor fully bad, but something more complicated, more real, more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The question was, how long could she keep walking that tightrope before she fell? The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in early December. Anya was dreaming of her parents' kitchen in their old apartment, the smell of her mother's pierogi, the sound of her father's laughter. Then, the ringing shattered everything, pulling her back to the present, to the dark bedroom in Tribeca, to the reality she'd been living for 6 weeks. She grabbed her phone, heart already racing. Unknown number. Hello? Anya Volkov? The voice was male, accented, unfamiliar. I have someone who wants to speak with you. Then another voice, younger, terrified. Anya, I don't understand what's happening. Mikhail. Anya sat bolt upright, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Mikhail, where are you? Are you hurt? I'm scared, I don't know where. His voice cut off, replaced by the first man's calm, measured tone. Your brother is safe for now. Whether he stays that way depends entirely on you, Miss Volkov. Anya's mind raced, terror warring with the survival instincts she'd developed over the past weeks. What do you want? Information about Viktor Morozov's operations, bank accounts, property holdings, security protocols. You have access to all of it. The man paused. You'll deliver this information to us within 24 hours. Or your brother's treatment becomes complicated. I don't have that kind of access. Don't insult my intelligence. You've been working closely with Morozov for over a month. You translate his most sensitive documents. You attend his private meetings. Another pause. We've been watching you, Miss Volkov. We know exactly what you do. So does Mr. Sokolov. At the mention of Sokolov's name, ice flooded Anya's veins. Please, my brother has nothing to do with this. He's innocent. So were many people. Before you chose to interfere in matters that didn't concern you. Actions have consequences. You're learning that now. The voice hardened. 24 hours. We'll contact you with delivery instructions. And Miss Volkov, if you tell Morozov, if you involve his security, your brother dies immediately. We have people inside Mount Sinai. Do you understand? Yes, Anya whispered. The line went dead. For several seconds, Anya sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Then she moved, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought had stalled. She pulled on clothes, grabbed her laptop, her mind spinning through impossible options. She could call Victor, should call Victor, but what if they were watching? What if they really did have people inside the hospital? One call to Nikolai, one security team mobilizing, and Mikhail could be. No, she couldn't think that way. She could go to the police, but with what evidence? A threatening phone call could come from anyone, and how would she explain her connection to Victor without exposing everything? She could run, take what money she had, disappear with Mikhail somehow, except she couldn't get to him. They had him. He was under their control. Anya paced her apartment, her breath coming in short gasps. Think like you've learned to think. What would Victor do? Victor would gather information. Victor would find leverage. Victor would never negotiate from a position of weakness. But Anya wasn't Victor. She was a translator who'd stumbled into this world 6 weeks ago, trying to survive, trying to protect her brother, and now she'd failed at the one thing that mattered most. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo of Mikhail in his hospital bed, unconscious with an IV line. The timestamp showed it had been taken 15 minutes ago. Another text. We're closer than you think. Don't test us. Anya sank onto her couch, tears finally breaking through the shock. She thought of her parents, of the promises she'd made at their graves to protect Mikhail, to give him the life they'd dreamed of for him. She thought of every sacrifice, every compromise, every moral boundary she'd crossed, all of it for nothing. At 4:15 a.m., there was a soft knock at her door. Anya's head snapped up, fear spiking. But when she checked the peephole, she saw Nikolai. She opened the door, And he took one look at her face and knew what happened. The words spilled out, the call, the threats. Mikhail. Nikolai's expression grew darker with each detail. We need to tell Victor. Now. They said if I tell anyone, they're lying. Standard intimidation tactic. Nikolai was already on his phone. They want you panicked and isolated. That's when people make mistakes. He spoke rapidly in Russian. Sir, we have a situation. Miss Volkov's brother has been taken. 20 minutes later, Anya sat in Victor's penthouse. He was in a dark suit despite the hour, looking like he'd never gone to bed. Maybe he hadn't. Konstantin was there too, and Yuri, and several men Anya had seen but never spoken to. Tell me everything, Victor said, his voice deadly calm. Every word they used, every sound you heard in the background. Anya recounted the conversation, forcing herself to remember details through the panic. Victor listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The voice, he said finally. You said it was accented. What kind? Russian, but different from yours. Harsher. Like she struggled to articulate. Like Moscow, but the outskirts, not central. Victor glanced at Konstantin, who nodded. Sokolov's people. He recruits from specific neighborhoods. The timing tells us something too, Yuri added. 24 hours means they need the information quickly. Probably for a planned operation. They're under pressure. Victor stood, walking to his windows. The city was still dark, just the faintest hint of dawn on the eastern horizon. They made a mistake taking Mikhail. They should have just threatened. By actually taking him, they've committed to action. That limits their options, but increases the danger to him, Anya said, her voice breaking. If they feel trapped, which is why we move fast and smart. Victor turned back to face the room. Yuri, I want every contact we have at Mount Sinai activated. Find out how they took him, who was on duty, where the security footage gaps are. Konstantin, reach out to our people in Sokolov's organization. Someone knows where they're holding the boy. We still have people inside? Anya asked. Always. Alexei and Dmitri weren't the only ones playing both sides. Victor's smile was cold. The difference is, my people do it with my knowledge. Over the next 6 hours, information flowed in. Mikhail had been taken during a shift change at the hospital. 3 minutes when no one was monitoring his room directly. A nurse had been bribed to disconnect the room's security camera. The vehicle used was registered to a shell company connected to one of Sokolov's fronts, but the location remained unknown. At noon, Anya's phone rang again, the same voice. You have 12 hours remaining. Have you prepared the information? Anya glanced at Victor, who nodded. I'm working on it, but I need proof he's okay. Let me talk to him. You're in no position to make demands, and you're in no position to get what you want. Anya was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. 6 weeks with Victor had taught her something about negotiation. I need to know my brother is alive and unharmed, or you get nothing. A pause, then Mikhail's voice, stronger this time. Anya, I'm okay. I don't know where I am, but I'm not hurt. The line cut off. Satisfied? The man asked. For now, I'll have the information ready, but I'm not delivering it to just anyone. I want to meet with whoever's in charge, face to face. Those are my terms. You want the information? You deal with me directly. Otherwise, you can explain to your boss why you failed. Anya was channeling every negotiation she'd witnessed, every power play she'd seen Victor execute. I'll wait for your call. She hung up before he could respond. Victor's expression was unreadable. That was either very brave or very foolish. It was necessary. You taught me that. Never negotiate from weakness. If I'm just a messenger, they can eliminate me after I deliver. But if I insist on direct contact, I become valuable. She's right, Konstantin said, approval in his weathered face. And it gives us an opportunity. If they agree to meet, we can track the location, position our people. The call came back 30 minutes later. Mr. Sokolov will meet with you 6 p.m. tonight. Come alone to Pier 17 at South Street Seaport. Bring the information. Any sign of security, any indication you've involved Morozov, and your brother disappears forever. After hanging up, Anya looked at Victor. So what's the real plan? The real plan, Victor said, pulling out his phone and making a call, involves someone I never thought I'd contact willingly. Agent Chen, this is Victor Morozov. I believe we need to discuss a matter of mutual interest. The next hours were a whirlwind. FBI agents arrived at the penthouse, a surreal sight that made Anya's head spin. Agent Jennifer Chen was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked at Victor like she wasn't sure whether to arrest him or thank him. Let me be clear, she told the room. We've been building a case against Sokolov for 3 years. If your information helps us take him down, we'll ensure the safety of Miss Volkov and her brother. But I need evidence, real evidence, not hearsay. You'll get it, Victor said. Tonight, at the meeting, Anya will wear a wire. You'll have the entire conversation recorded. I can't authorize using a civilian in an active operation. You don't have a choice, Anya interrupted. All eyes turned to her. Sokolov demanded to meet me personally. If I don't show or if he suspects a setup, Mikhail dies. So I'm going, with or without your authorization. The only question is whether you're going to help. Agent Chen studied her for a long moment. You understand the risk? I've understood the risk since the moment I decided to act 6 weeks ago. I'm done being afraid. As the sun began its descent toward the Hudson River, Anya stood in Victor's penthouse, being fitted with a recording device so small she could barely feel it. Federal agents positioned throughout the area, Victor's security team on standby, and somewhere in the city, Mikhail waited, unaware that his sister was about to walk into the lion's den to save him. Victor approached as the technical team finished their preparations. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "There is no other way. We both know that. Then at least understand, if something goes wrong, if Sokolov suspects anything, you get out immediately. Don't try to be a hero." Anya met his eyes, seeing genuine concern there. "Funny, 6 weeks ago all I wanted was to be invisible, to survive quietly. Now I'm about to confront one of the most dangerous men in New York." "You're not the same person you were 6 weeks ago." "No," Anya agreed. "I'm not sure if that's good or bad. It's survival, and sometimes that's enough." At 5:45 p.m., Nikolai drove Anya to South Street Seaport. The winter sun was setting early, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. The pier was relatively quiet. Just a few tourists taking photos of the Brooklyn Bridge. Anya walked onto Pier 17, a USB drive in her pocket containing carefully curated information, enough to seem legitimate, but nothing that would truly compromise Victor's operations. Agent Chen had signed off on it personally. Roman Sokolov was waiting near the end of the pier, flanked by 4 men in dark coats. He was younger than Anya expected, maybe early 50s, with sharp features and cold eyes that assessed her like a predator sizing up prey. "Miss Volkov," he said in Russian, "you've caused me considerable trouble. I saved someone's life. I won't apologize for that." "Principles. How refreshing." Sokolov's smile didn't reach his eyes. "In my experience, principles are luxuries people abandon when the stakes get high enough. Let's see if yours hold." "Where's my brother?" "Safe for the moment. Do you have what I asked for?" Anya pulled out the USB drive, holding it up but not handing it over. "I want proof he's alive. Current proof, not a recording." Sokolov nodded to one of his men, who held up a phone showing a live video feed. Mikhail, sitting in what looked like a warehouse, frightened but unharmed. "Satisfied? Now give me the drive." This was it, the moment when everything could go wrong or finally go right. Anya's hand trembled slightly as she extended the USB drive, but not from fear, from resolve, from the understanding that sometimes the only way out is through. "Before I give you this," she said in clear Russian, knowing the wire would capture every word, "I want to know something. Why? Why all this? Victor, this endless war, what's the point?" Sokolov's expression darkened. "You want philosophy at a time like this?" "I want understanding. I've spent 6 weeks in this world, watching people scheme and hurt each other over territory, over pride, over old grudges. My parents died in random violence. My brother suffers from disease. These are the real threats, the real tragedies, not whatever score you're trying to settle with Viktor Morozov." For a moment, something flickered in Sokolov's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Your parents, the jewelry store, 5 years ago. That was one of my operations." Anya's heart stopped. "What?" "The robbery. I ordered it. The shooter was supposed to empty the register, nothing more. But he panicked and 2 people died." Sokolov's face was stone. "Collateral damage in a larger game. I won't apologize for it." The wire captured every word. Agent Chen, listening from a van 2 blocks away, was already moving. "You took everything from me," Anya whispered, her voice thick with emotion that was no longer acted. "My parents, my future, my brother's health. The medical bills destroyed us, and it was just collateral damage to you. It's the nature of this business. People get hurt. You should have learned that by now." Sokolov extended his hand for the USB drive. "Now give me what I came for." "No." The single word hung in the air like a gunshot. Sokolov's expression turned dangerous. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You took my parents. You terrorized my brother. You turned my life into a nightmare, and I'm done being your victim." "Then your brother is already safe." "Your man at the warehouse? He's been working for Victor for 2 months. The FBI is there right now." Understanding and rage flooded Sokolov's face simultaneously. His hand moved toward his coat, but federal agents were already emerging from every direction, weapons drawn. "Roman Sokolov, you're under arrest." Agent Chen's voice rang out across the pier. "Put your hands where I can see them." In the chaos that followed, shouts, drawn weapons, men dropping to their knees, Anya stood perfectly still. 6 weeks ago, she would have been terrified. Now she felt only a cold, clear certainty that this was justice, imperfect, but real. Hours later, after statements and debriefings and medical checks on Mikhail, Anya sat with Victor in his penthouse once more. The city glittered below them, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its shadow. "Agent Chen tells me your testimony, combined with the recording, will put Sokolov away for decades," Victor said. "They're offering you witness protection, new identity, new city, full support for you and your brother. And you, what happens to you?" "I made a deal. Information on Sokolov's network in exchange for, let's call it understanding. I won't say I'm going legitimate, but certain arrangements have been made." Anya was quiet for a long moment. 6 weeks ago, I was a waitress trying to survive. You were the dangerous man I served drinks to. Now you're the woman who took down one of New York's most wanted criminals, who saved her brother, who learned to survive in a world that should have destroyed her." Victor smiled slightly. "Your father would be proud, I think, and your mother would say you've proven that principles aren't luxuries, They're foundations. I'm taking the protection offer, Anya said. Mikhail needs a fresh start. We both do. I thought you might. I've arranged for a substantial amount to be transferred to your new account wherever you end up. Your brother's medical care, college tuition, a house. Consider it a debt repaid. You don't owe me. I owe you my life, Anya Volkov. And more than that, you reminded me why I started this in the first place. Not for power or wealth, but to create safety in a world that offers none. 3 months later, in a small college town in Oregon, a woman named Anna Brennan walked her younger brother to his first day of classes. He was healthy, smiling, full of plans for the future. She worked as a translator for a university, lived in a modest but comfortable house, and every morning watched the sun rise over mountains instead of skyscrapers. Sometimes she thought about that night on the pier, about the choice to speak instead of staying silent, to act instead of accepting victimhood, about the dangerous man who'd become an unlikely ally, and the impossible journey from waitress to witness to survivor. In her desk drawer, she kept a single item from her old life, a handwritten note in Russian that had arrived the week after she left New York. You found your voice in the whisper of shadows. May you never lose it in the light of day. With respect and gratitude, V. Anya. Anna now smiled as she read it, then tucked it away. The past was behind her. The future waited, uncertain but hers to shape. And she had learned finally that courage wasn't about never being afraid. It was about choosing to act despite the fear, to speak despite the danger, to stand despite every reason to fall. It was about the echo that remained long after the first whisper faded, the echo of choosing to be brave when bravery seemed impossible.